There is a different kind of silence just before dawn. It is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of waiting. The world has not fully awakened yet. The streets are still. The air feels almost suspended. And somewhere above it all, a bell tower stands, holding the first sound that will soon break the night. That image has stayed with me more than once. Because there are seasons in life that feel exactly like that hour before dawn. Not fully dark, not yet bright. Quiet in a way that can feel sacred, but also uncertain. I have known nights like that. Nights when my mind was awake longer than I wanted. Nights when my heart was waiting for peace before sleep. Nights when I felt caught in a hush. I did not know how to read, and what I wanted most was assurance. Something steady. Something strong enough to remind me that morning still comes. That is what the bell tower feels like to me. A promise above the sleeping town. A steady witness over quiet streets. A reminder that time is moving, even when the night feels endless. God is like that. He stands above what confuses me. He remains steady over what feels uncertain. He knows when morning is coming, even when I still sit in the dark. There were times when I thought if I could not feel him strongly, then maybe he was far away. But I have learned that God is often closest in the quietest hours. Not always loud, not always dramatic, but deeply present. Like the bell that is not rung yet, but still belongs to the morning. His peace is sometimes like that too. Not an instant emotional rush, not always a sudden wave. Sometimes it begins as a quiet certainty that does not have to shout. A certainty that says, you are still held. This night is not endless. I have not left. That kind of peace changes the soul slowly. It does not always remove the questions immediately, but it keeps the questions from ruling the whole heart. It reminds us that God is not asleep just because the world is quiet. He is not absent just because we are waiting. He is not uncertain just because we are. The bell tower does not create the dawn, but it bears witness that the hour is moving toward light. And God does that for us. He reminds us that every dark season is still held inside His timing. He reminds us that waiting is not abandonment. He reminds us that silence can still be holy. If you are in one of those before dawn seasons tonight, be gentle with yourself. You do not need to force the sunrise. You do not need to solve the whole day before it begins. You do not need to fear the quiet. God is already there in it. He watches over the still streets of the heart. He remains above the restless thoughts. He stands faithful over every hidden ache. And when the right moment comes, He knows how to let light arrive. So tonight, let the silence become softer. Let the waiting become lighter. Let your heart rest beneath the faithfulness of God. Because the one who holds the hour before dawn also holds you. And the God who never misses the morning will not miss your need for peace tonight. There is a certain safety in the sound of a gate closing at evening. when the sheep are finally gathered in. It is a small sound, simple, ordinary. But it means something important. It means the wandering has ended for the day. It means the open fields are behind them. It means the shepherd has counted, gathered, and brought them in. I think many hearts long for that feeling. Not just sleep, not just quiet, but the deeper peace of being gathered. Because there are days when life scatters us. Our thoughts go in too many directions. Our emotions pull us apart. Responsibilities tug at the mind until even rest feels hard to enter. And by night, it can feel like parts of us are still wandering. That is when I think of the shepherd's gate. God does not only watch us from a distance, He gathers us. He calls the scattered places of the heart back toward rest. He brings the anxious thoughts inward. He reminds the weary soul that it does not belong to the open wilderness forever. There were seasons when I felt emotionally scattered like that. I could not easily settle. My body was still, but my mind was roaming. I wanted peace, but I felt divided inside. And slowly, God showed me that His care is not only protection from danger, it is also the kindness of gathering what has been stretched too thin. He gathers the mind, He gathers the fear, He gathers the grief, He gathers the tired pieces of a long day and holds them inside His care. The gate closing at evening is not confinement. It is mercy. It is the shepherd saying, "You do not need to keep wandering tonight. You do not need to keep looking for safety in every direction. You can rest here." What a gift that is. Because so much of anxiety comes from living as if we must stay alert in every direction all the time. But in God's presence, we are allowed to stop scanning the horizon. We are allowed to stop bracing ourselves. We are allowed to stop running mentally long after the day is done. The shepherd is awake. The gate is secure. The night is held. That kind of truth brings a softer kind of rest than sleep alone. It brings the rest of belonging, the rest of being counted, the rest of being known. The shepherd does not lose track of his own. He does not forget one on the hillside. He does not close the evening without knowing who is still weary and who needs gentler care. And that means He knows you tonight. He knows what has worn you down. He knows what has troubled your thoughts. He knows what part of your heart still feels exposed. And He still invites you in. So if your soul feels scattered, let Him gather you. If your mind feels restless, let Him bring it inward. If your day has left you thin and tired, let Him be the shepherd who closes the evening over you with peace. You do not need to keep wandering tonight. There is a place of quiet in God. There is safety in His care. There is rest beneath His watchfulness. And the one who gathers His sheep at evening still knows how to gather a weary heart into peace. There was a season in my life when everything felt suspended, as if I were standing between what had already ended and what had not yet begun. I was no longer where I used to be, but I was not yet where I hoped to go. And that in-between place felt harder than I expected. It was like standing on an old bridge over a quiet river at dusk. Behind me was the road I had already traveled. Ahead of me was a path I could not yet clearly see. And beneath me, the water kept moving, even when I felt still. I did not know what to do with that kind of waiting. I wanted movement. I wanted certainty. I wanted some kind of sign that the next season would be better than the last one. But instead, God gave me a quieter lesson. He taught me that not every sacred moment feels like arrival. Some holy moments feel like standing still long enough to trust Him in the middle. The bridge did not rush the river. The river did not fear the evening, and God was present in both. There are times when life feels clear and strong, like a road in full daylight. And then there are times when we stand between chapters, holding memories in one hand and uncertainty in the other. That was where I found myself. I had prayers that had not yet been answered. I had grief that had not yet fully softened. I had hope, but it felt fragile. And I had faith, but it felt quieter than before. Still, God did not treat my quiet faith as weakness. He stayed with me there. He did not shame me for being uncertain. He did not hurry me through the process. He simply remained near, like the evening light over the water, calm and faithful. And slowly, I began to see something I had missed before. The river beneath the bridge never stopped moving. Even when I felt stuck, God was still working. Even when I could not see progress, His hand was still guiding the current. Even when I did not know what was ahead, He did. The bridge became a place of trust, a place where I learned that I do not need to control the next chapter before it arrives. A place where I learned that God is not only present in fulfilled prayers, but also in quiet waiting. A place where I learned that His faithfulness is not measured by speed. Some of the deepest peace in life comes when we stop demanding that everything makes sense immediately. That peace does not come from finally understanding every detail. It comes from remembering who God is, even while the details remain hidden. God is wise when I am uncertain. God is steady when I am tired. God is present when I feel caught between past and future. And He does not waste the in-between places. Sometimes He uses them to heal what was wounded. Sometimes He uses them to loosen what we were never meant to keep carrying. Sometimes He uses them to teach our hearts how to rest before the next road begins. There were evenings when I stood in prayer and felt like nothing was changing. But the river taught me otherwise. What moves quietly is still moving. What grows slowly is still growing. What God is shaping in hidden places is still real, even before it becomes visible. And so, I stopped fighting the bridge. I stopped treating the waiting season like a failure. I stopped assuming that if I had not arrived yet, then nothing meaningful was happening. Instead, I began to thank God for meeting me there, for being the God of the crossing, the God of the pause, the God of the quiet places between old roads and new beginnings. If you're standing in that kind of place tonight, do not lose heart. If you feel suspended between what was and what will be, God has not forgotten you. If you feel like you are no longer where you were, but not yet where you hope to be, God is still leading you. The bridge is not the end of the journey. It is part of it. And the one who watches over the river beneath you also watches over the road ahead. You do not need to force the next chapter open tonight. You do not need to figure out tomorrow before rest can come. You can stand here. You can breathe here. You can trust here. Because the God who carries the river forward will also carry you across. There is something deeply calming about walking through an orchard in the late evening. The day has already softened. The noise has already begun to fade. And the trees stand in quiet rows, as if they know something about patience that people often forget. An orchard is not built in a day. Fruit takes time. Roots take time. Seasons turn slowly there. And that is why I think God sometimes speaks to the heart through places like that. Because so much of our fear comes from wanting immediate results, immediate healing, immediate clarity, immediate change. But God often works like an orchard, patiently, quietly, faithfully. There was a season when I kept feeling disappointed by how slowly things seemed to move in my life. I thought I should be further along. I thought I should be stronger by now. I thought certain prayers should already have visible answers. But instead of quick change, God kept inviting me into slower trust. The orchard helped me understand why. No tree spends all year producing fruit. There are seasons for growth beneath the surface, seasons for pruning, seasons for waiting, seasons when nothing looks dramatic, but everything important is still happening. That truth reached me more deeply than I expected. I realized I had been judging my life too harshly by what I could see in the moment. If there was no fruit yet, I assumed something was wrong. If there was no visible answer, I assumed God was silent. If I still felt weak, I assumed I had failed. But God is gentler than that. He knows the season of every soul. He knows when to prune. He knows when to water. He knows when hidden work matters more than visible results. And He is not impatient with the process. That changed the way I prayed. I stopped demanding that everything bloom right away. I started asking God to make me faithful in the season I was actually in. Because faithfulness in one season prepares the soul for the next one. The orchard also taught me that pruning is not punishment. Sometimes branches are cut back so life can grow more deeply. Sometimes things are removed because they were weighing us down. Sometimes God trims what we thought we needed in order to make room for something healthier later. At first, that kind of work can feel like loss, but in the hands of God, even loss can become preparation. The path through the orchard felt peaceful because nothing there was frantic. The trees did not compare themselves. The fruit did not arrive by panic. The whole place rested inside a rhythm created by God. And maybe that is something our hearts need to remember. You do not have to become whole overnight. You do not have to force growth. You do not have to live in constant urgency to become who God is shaping you to be. You can walk slowly with Him. You can trust His timing. You can believe that even if this season looks quiet, He is not absent from it. There are things growing in you right now that only heaven fully sees. Patience, tenderness, wisdom, humility, a deeper dependence on God than you had before. Those things matter. And one day, what feels hidden now will become visible in ways you could not have forced. That is how the orchard works. And that is how grace often works too. So if tonight you feel discouraged by slow progress, let your heart rest. The God who tends the orchard also tends you. He knows your season. He knows your pace. He knows exactly what kind of fruit He is forming in your life. And He is not worried by the slowness. He is still watering, still pruning, still protecting, still preparing. The path may feel quiet tonight, but quiet does not mean empty. Sometimes quiet means growth is happening where panic cannot reach it. And that is a beautiful place to rest.
There is something peaceful about a stone bench in a garden after sunset. It does not move. It does not rush. It simply remains there, quiet and steady, while the day fades and the air cools. People sit on a bench when they are no longer hurrying, when walking becomes listening, when striving becomes stillness. And that is why I think of it when I think of prayer. Not the kind of prayer that tries to sound impressive, not the kind that rushes through words, but the kind that simply sits with God. There have been nights when I did not have many words left. I was tired. My mind felt full. My spirit felt quieter than usual. And on those nights, I used to think maybe I was failing at prayer. But God began to teach me something gentler, that being with Him matters more than saying everything perfectly. A stone bench in a garden does not demand eloquence. It offers presence. And sometimes prayer is exactly that. Showing up, sitting down, letting the soul be honest before God. No performance, no pressure, no pretending, just presence. The bench also reminds me that rest is not laziness. Stillness is not weakness. Quiet does not mean nothing is happening. Some of the deepest healing in the soul happens when we finally stop long enough to be fully present with God. That kind of stillness can feel unfamiliar at first. We are used to movement, used to solving, used to caring, used to filling every silence. But gardens are built for slower rhythms, and God often restores us through slower rhythms too. A cooled evening, a softened sky, a place to sit, a heart that no longer has to outrun itself. When I learned to pray like that, something changed in me. I did not always receive immediate answers, but I received peace. I did not always leave with the whole future explained, but I left less burdened. I did not always know what would happen next, but I remembered that God was near, and that was enough for the night. The stone bench teaches a quiet wisdom. You do not need to stand all the time. You do not need to carry everything in your own strength. You do not need to fill every moment with effort to be loved by God. You are allowed to sit. You are allowed to rest in His presence. You are allowed to let the evening slow you down. You are allowed to stop rehearsing tomorrow and simply be here. That kind of permission feels holy, because the world is always asking for more movement, more urgency, more noise. But God is not frightened by quiet. He meets us there, in the garden, on the bench, in the long exhale after a hard day, in the prayer that is more silence than speech. So if tonight your heart feels overworked, imagine that garden. Imagine the evening settling softly around you. Imagine a place where you do not have to prove anything. Imagine God near enough that silence no longer feels empty. And let yourself believe that peace can be simple. A place to sit, a place to breathe, a place to be held without hurry. The God who walks gently through gardens still knows how to meet a tired soul in the quiet. And sometimes, that is all the heart needs before sleep.
There is a certain kind of peace that comes from seeing a small house at the edge of a quiet field after a long day. Nothing about it is loud. Nothing about it asks for attention. But from far away, it already feels safe. The light in the window says enough. The stillness around it says enough. It tells the tired heart that rest is possible. I think many of us spend years searching for that feeling without knowing how to name it. We look for safety and achievement. We look for rest and control. We look for peace in circumstances lining up the way we hoped. But real peace is not built that way. Real peace feels more like that little house at the edge of the field. Simple, steady, unshaken by noise. There was a time when my soul felt scattered in too many directions. My thoughts ran ahead of me. My worries multiplied faster than I could quiet them. Even when my body was tired, my heart did not know how to settle. I kept trying to solve my unrest by thinking harder. But thinking harder only made me more tired. And slowly, God began to show me that peace is not something I build by force. It is something I enter by trust. The house at the edge of the field does not chase the traveler. It simply stands ready. And that is how God's peace often feels. Not demanding, not frantic, not dramatic. Ready to receive the weary, ready to cover the restless, ready to welcome the heart that has carried too much for too long. The field around that house reminds me of all the things I cannot control. The changing weather, the passing seasons, the growth that takes its time. The things that belong to God more than they belong to me. There is humility in a field. You can tend it, but you cannot force it. You can plant in it, but you cannot command the rain. You can wait over it, but you cannot rush the harvest. That lesson found its way into my heart. I realized I had been trying to live like someone who could control the whole field of life. Every outcome, every answer, every tomorrow.
But only God sees the whole landscape clearly. Only God knows when the rain should come. Only God knows what is growing beneath the surface. Only God knows how to hold what feels uncertain to me. And the more I let Him be, God, the more I was able to rest. Not because life became predictable, but because I remembered that I do not have to carry what was never mine to carry. The little house at the edge of the field became, in my mind, a picture of God's welcome. A place where I do not have to prove anything. A place where I do not have to arrive polished and strong. A place where tiredness is not rejected. A place where quiet is not empty, but kind. There are nights when the world feels too big and the heart feels too exposed. But God still knows how to gather His children into rest. He knows how to be sheltered without pressure. He knows how to offer peace without noise. He knows how to meet the exhausted soul and say, without hurry, you can stop here. That kind of mercy changes a person. It softens what anxiety had tightened. It loosens what fear had clenched. It reminds the mind that not every problem must be solved tonight. Some things can wait for morning. Some things can be left in the field. Some things can be placed in God's hands and not picked back up again before sleep. If your heart feels overworked tonight, picture that house. Picture the light still on. Picture the field lying still under the sky. Picture God as steady, welcoming, and near. And let yourself believe that you are not meant to keep running forever. There is peace for you. There is shelter for you. There is a place in God where the soul can stop striving and simply be held. And that place is still open tonight.